US President Donald Trump reiterates his praise for North Korea ahead of his second summit with the regime's leader. He suggests there could be more summits, but sanctions will stay until there's real progress. Samsung Electronics dazzles the tech world at its Unpacked event in San Francisco. The South Korean tech giant unveils its first folding smartphone and its new Galaxy S10 range. Plus, South Korea chokes yet again under a cloud of fine dust. Despite the introduction of new dust-busting measures, the unhealthy air pollution is forecast to linger for the entire day. So, our top story this morning, US President Donald Trump says next week's summit in Hanoi with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un might not be his last face-to-face meeting with Kim. However, he's stressing the regime has to do something meaningful if it wants the weight of sanctions lifted off its shoulders. Our Lee Ji-won starts us off.
U.S. President Donald Trump has again stressed that he and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un have a very good relationship, but that sanctions will be in place until more is done.
Hello, everyone. The sanctions are on in full. As you know, I haven't taken sanctions off. I'd love to be able to, but in order to do that, we have to do something that's meaningful on the other side.
This comes as President Trump fielded questions from reporters at the White House prior to his bilateral talks with Austria's Chancellor on Wednesday. And as if to further lure North Korea into taking that meaningful step, President Trump also reiterated the potential he sees in North Korea's economy. While stressing that he will be meeting with Kim Jong-un for 2 days this time, President Trump hinted on the likelihood of having more summits with Kim.
But we've made a lot of progress. We've made a tremendous amount. That doesn't mean this is going to be the last meeting, because I don't believe it will. But we have subjects to discuss which will be very fruitful, I believe.
This comes in line with President Trump saying that he is in no rush over North Korea's denuclearization on Tuesday. He said he doesn't have any pressing time schedule and that as long as there is no nuclear testing, he's in no hurry. These remarks add to speculation that Trump is trying to lower expectations about the upcoming summit, with no complete denuclearization deal reached this time as well. Some observers suggest the meeting could first settle on a nuclear freeze for now. Lee Ji-won, Arirang News.
North Korea's point man on the United States and his delegation have arrived in Hanoi for talks on the agenda for the second Kim-Trump summit, which is now less than 1 week away. His American counterpart is set to arrive in the Vietnamese capital very soon, with watchers saying working-level talks could actually start in the coming hours. Lee Seung-jae with the details.
Sporting a blue dress shirt and tie, North Korea's special representative for U.S. Affairs of the State Affairs Commission, Kim Hyuk-chul, arrived in Hanoi at 6:20 p.m. local time on Wednesday via a plane from Beijing. With him were 2 other senior North Korean officials, Kim Sung-hae, the director of the North's United Front Department's Tactical Office, and Choi Kang-il, the acting director general for the Foreign Ministry's North American Affairs Department. Shortly after their arrival, they were whisked away by car to an undisclosed location. Kim Hyuk-chul is expected to meet with his American counterpart Stephen Biegun in the Vietnamese capital to discuss what will be covered during the 2-day talks between the leaders of North Korea and the U.S. next week. According to the U.S. State Department, Biegun departed from Washington for Hanoi on Tuesday and is expected to arrive in Vietnam soon. During the pre-summit negotiations, the 2 sides will likely draft a joint statement to be issued after the Hanoi summit, which will be called the Hanoi Declaration. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Now, as a follow-up to that report, the UN Security Council has eased sanctions on senior North Korean officials, enabling them to travel to Vietnam for the second Pyongyang-Washington summit. Reuters says the sanctions have been temporarily lifted for the entire North Korean delegation, as it's not yet clear exactly who will be traveling to Hanoi for the preparation work and the summit. Such a move comes as Vietnam requested for a blanket exemption. The UN Sanctions Committee also eased sanctions for the North's officials last year in June, when Pyongyang and Washington held their first landmark summit in Singapore. So, as the second North Korea-US summit in Hanoi edges ever and ever closer, let's hear what experts in Seoul believe the focus of the talks will be. Park Ji-won with more.
North Korea's denuclearization is the key bone of contention between North Korea and the U.S., and the world is watching to see what agreement the two sides can reach on the matter while they are in Hanoi. During its engagement with North Korea, the Trump administration has revised the condition of the North's denuclearization from its original stance of CVID, complete, verifiable, and irreversible denuclearization, to so-called FFVD, final and fully verified denuclearization, a softer position aimed at solving the issue more quickly. As both sides are expected to have such more realistic expectations in mind, North Korea experts say Pyongyang and Washington are expected to discuss ways to verify North Korea's denuclearizing steps on some of its nuclear facilities.
As it seems, both sides haven't made much progress during their working-level talks. The two countries are expected to exchange specific plans for implementing the dismantlement of previously mentioned sites like Punggye-ri and Dongchangli, rather than trying to reach a grander agreement on denuclearization.
It is expected that North Korean side may offer an invitation of international experts to inspect and verify dismantlement of Dongchangli missile test site and the Punggye-ri nuclear test site, as well as Yongbyon nuclear facilities.
Experts also expect Washington's corresponding measures will be another key agenda in Hanoi. While many expect the U.S. to offer North Korea some sanctions exemptions, the punitive measures are expected to remain to some degree.
It is still speculative whether there will be some kind of agreements that will help lift at least part of existing economic sanctions on North Korea. Because Trump administration believes that as long as economic sanctions remain in place, North Korean leadership will be under pressure to carry out eventually final and fully verified denuclearization. So the key issue in the second summit meeting between Trump and Kim will not be so much about political and security measures, but it is about economic sanctions.
Experts say further discussions on the repatriation of the remains of U.S. troops killed during the Korean War, the establishment of liaison offices in both countries, and some business initiatives like inter-Korean projects are also expected to be on the table in Hanoi next week. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Now to the rest of the day's news, and I'm sad to report that most of South Korea is blanketed yet again in unhealthy levels of fine dust particles. Fine dust levels are expected to soar to very bad for Seoul and the surrounding metropolitan area during the morning. They've already pretty much reached that point now, while the nation's eastern coast will see bad levels of air quality. You can see just how bad it is on the screen there. Seoul and Gyeonggi-do province have issued preemptive reduction measures throughout the day. They kicked in at 6 a.m. and will continue until 9 p.m. The measures include the reduction of operations at pollutant-emitting workplaces and an alternate no driving day policy for public sector vehicles. Now, on a brighter note, literally, after months of anticipation, only slightly dampened by leaked images in the past week, Samsung Electronics has showcased its first ever foldable smartphone and its latest flagship lineup. Watchers say the foldable device, while pretty pricey, could change the way we use our phones forever. Oh Soo-young reports.
Samsung Electronics is making waves in the global smartphone market, launching one of the world's first foldable smartphones and its new flagship lineup at its highly anticipated Unpacked launch event. Held in San Francisco on Wednesday, the South Korean mobile giant introduced its latest lineup of premium mobile handsets. All eyes were on the Galaxy Fold, the first bendable smartphone to be released by the company. The 7.3-inch Infinity Flex display can be folded hundreds of thousands of times without wear and tear, according to Samsung, which took 7 years to develop the technology. When folded, a second display measures 4.6 inches. The phone also features 6 cameras. Samsung's flagship Galaxy S10 models are also set to break the conventions of smartphone technology. The flagship models S10 and the 1TB S10 Plus feature the world's first ultrasonic fingerprint sensor, built into their OLED displays, which will come almost bezel-free, and with a triple-lens camera setup on the rears. A 5G-ready version of the phone was also revealed, along with a simpler S10e model. But the question is whether consumers will be convinced, as the new models come with hefty price tags, the foldable device set to retail for a staggering $1,980. Industry tracker Counterpoint Research projected this week that the latest Galaxy series will top 40 million sales within the first year on the market, about 5 million more than the previous S9 version. The best-selling Galaxy lineup to date is the S7 series released 3 years ago, which sold 50 million units within 12 months. In South Korea, Galaxy S10 handsets will hit the shelves on March 8th, with pre-orders starting Monday. The 5G will be released near the end of March and the Galaxy Fold in late April. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Now, while Samsung is riding high, it's a different story for two of the nation's other huge companies, because prosecutors have raided the main office of South Korea's largest automakers, namely Hyundai Motor and Kia Motors, as part of a probe into allegations raised by a civic group and the Transport Ministry that they attempted to conceal defects in some of their models. Hyundai and Kia are also being investigated in the US over a wide-scale recall. Our Kim Hyo-sun tells us more.
The headquarters of Hyundai Motor and its affiliate Kia Motors was raided by the nation's prosecution on Wednesday. The search into the company's quality division at the main office located in southern Seoul comes as part of a probe into allegations that the automakers tried to cover up defects in some of their models. The prosecution explained they are looking into allegations raised by the Transport Ministry and local civic groups that Hyundai and Kia have violated recall regulations by delaying the fixing of engine defects. In May 2017, the ministry ordered the recall of some 240,000 vehicles, saying defects were found in a dozen of their models.
We've requested an investigation by the prosecution as there was no clear evidence that the automaker did not conceal the defects, and to warn the industry, which is passive when it comes to voluntary recalls.
A South Korean civic group also filed a complaint with the prosecution, alleging the automakers were hiding engine defects that they've known about for years.
The automakers denied the defects but hastily submitted recall plans as the investigation by the Transport Ministry became imminent.
Hyundai Motor and Kia Motors are also being investigated by the U.S. safety regulators and prosecutors over the recall of nearly 1.7 million vehicles in relation to engine defects. Kim Hyo-sun, Arirang News.
Last November, a pan-governmental body was launched to thoroughly inspect public institutions and root out corrupt hiring practices. After months of investigation, the committee on Wednesday announced its findings. For details on that, let's turn to our Choi Si-young.
At 1,200 public institutions, the investigators found a total of 182 cases where employees had been hired or promoted unfairly. That's what the committee said Wednesday, wrapping its 3-month probe. The committee examined new hires from October 2017 to January 2019 and promotions of part-timers to full-time over the past 5 years. Out of the 182 cases, the committee turned over 36 to prosecutors for further investigation. For the rest, the committee will request disciplinary measures for those involved in the hiring process, including termination of employment for those who benefited. The number of employees facing either investigation or punishment amount to roughly 300. A total of 13 employees are found to have unfairly earned their employment, and 55 applicants were adversely affected by that at the time. That number could increase as prosecutors speed up their investigation. The committee is looking into ways to give those applicants a chance to retake tests or resit their interviews. The pan-governmental body underlined that it will deliver harsh punishments to those involved in the unfair hiring practices and remedies to those affected by them. 최시영, Arirang News.
New economic data breaking down South Korea's unemployment rate by region and city has been released. It shows unemployment in major manufacturing hubs, places like Ulsan and Gyeongsang-Bukdo province, has unfortunately reached record highs. Kim Ji-yeon reports.
Statistics Korea on Wednesday released the unemployment rates by region, showing a national average last year of 3.8%. The unemployment rate in Seoul was the highest among the regions and cities, rising by 0.3 percentage points compared to the previous year to record 4.8%, which the statistics agency attributed to the sluggish local economy. Ulsan recorded the next highest at 4.6%, mainly due to a slump in key industrial sectors, particularly shipbuilding and automobiles, which have undergone a restructuring process. The province of Gyeongsang-Bukdo recorded its highest jobless rate since related data was first compiled in 2000 at 4.1%, mainly due to a slump in its main industrial sectors of smartphones and displays. The lowest jobless rate was in the country's southernmost island of Jeju, which was at 2%, thanks to a rebound in tourists from China, as Beijing lifted its retaliatory measures for Seoul's deployment of the THAAD missile system. The statistics agency also cited a surge in Jeju's retail sales, which rose on year by 11%. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Now, it's exciting times for everyone who likes to communicate via their smartphone and other mobile devices, because South Korea is set to become the first country in the entire world to start commercial operations of 5G wireless network. This means we can transmit data at extraordinary speeds. Seoul's finance chief heaped praise on the achievement on Wednesday and pledged to come up with strong governmental support measures so the services can really blossom in the coming years. Kim Hae-sung reports.
South Korea's finance minister says the 5G wireless network, which will be launched in Korea next month, will help improve people's quality of life. At an innovative growth strategy meeting on Wednesday, Minister Hong Nam-gi said the government's tax incentives and R&D investment in 5G have led to fruitful results, helping Korea become the first country in the world to start commercial operations of 5G mobile network services. He added that the country's top 3 mobile carriers will invest more than $2.6 billion in 5G this year. 20 times faster than 4G LTE, the 5G network can transmit 20 gigabytes of information a second. It is seen as the key infrastructure that will enable advances in areas like driverless cars, telemedicine, smart factories, and other areas thanks to its speed and reliability. According to market researcher IHS Markit, 5G is expected to generate over $12 trillion of global economic output and support 22 million jobs by 2035. Following the innovative growth strategy meeting, the finance minister visited the KT Network Control Center on Wednesday afternoon to see how 5G-based services like robots and the Internet of Things work and get feedback from operators. To further help lead advances in 5G and unleash innovation in ICT sectors, Minister Hong said the government will come up with a so-called 5G Plus strategy by next month. Kim Hae-sung, Arirang News.
Now, after many years, it appears ISIS is on its last legs. Hundreds of civilians have been evacuated from the Islamic State group's last sliver of land in eastern Syria. For more on this and other news from around the world, let's turn to our Arirang. So, Aram, it appears, anyway, that the final battle against ISIS is coming to an end.
Well, Mark, we still have to wait before any final declaration of victory against the militant group is made. The US-backed Syrian Democratic Forces said Wednesday they are waiting for all civilians to leave before they launch any offensive. Hundreds of civilians left in a convoy of trucks on Wednesday, though exact numbers have not been announced. The SDF are still being vigilant as some militants could be hiding among the evacuated civilians, and a screening point has been set up as a precaution. There were reports of a few militants surrendering, but the SDF said those reports could not be independently verified. The jihadists had been holding the civilians hostage in order to buy some time before what could be the final assault against them. The SDF says ISIS fighters have been pushed back to a tiny tent camp on the banks of the Euphrates River. Some 300 militants are said to be under siege in the town of Baghouz, with food, water and ammunition quickly running out. If the SDF ends the territorial rule of ISIS, then it would allow President Trump to begin withdrawing American troops from Syria, as he has pledged to do. However, there are still many who believe that the group's territorial defeat will not end the threat posed by the terrorists. They still stage and inspire attacks overseas through sleeper cells in both Syria and Iraq. Russia's defense ministry has released the first video showing an underwater test of its Poseidon nuclear-powered drone. The clip, released on Wednesday, came shortly after President Vladimir Putin's State of the Nation address. Putin said the tests of the Poseidon have been conducted successfully and the first submarine equipped to carry it will be commissioned later this year. He first mentioned the weapon early last year, saying it cannot be intercepted and can carry a nuclear warhead to target aircraft carrier groups or coastal areas. Also, in Wednesday's speech, Putin said he hopes to mend ties with the US and remains open for arms control talks with Washington. A French court has ordered Switzerland's largest bank, UBS, to pay $5 billion in fines for tax fraud. The court in Paris found the bank guilty of helping wealthy French clients stash undeclared funds in Swiss accounts through aggravated money laundering. The penalty is reported to be a record for such a case in France. UBS slammed the ruling, saying the conviction was based on what it called unfounded allegations of former employees. It also vowed to appeal the ruling.
Good morning. Toxic smog has smothered Korea with an ultra-fine dust advisory being in place for parts of Gyeonggi-do, Jeollado, and Chungcheongdo provinces. So be sure to wear anti-pollution dust masks to protect your lungs. However, remember to ventilate your home or workplace even on a dusty day like today by opening a window for even just 10 to 15 minutes. Spraying water over the room can also help to reduce indoor dust. Remember to drink extra water. It helps to flush dust particles from your system. And seaweed, broccoli, and ginseng are also known as natural detoxifiers. Temperature-wise, readings are hovering way above the season norms, and daily highs will jump twice as high as yesterday here in the capital, and milder than average temperatures and dusty days could carry on through the weekend. And it will get sunnier as the day goes on today, but the toxic haze should continue blurring the skyline with afternoon highs ranging from 8 to 12 degrees Celsius this afternoon. That's Korea for you, and here's international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, that's all we have for now on this Thursday morning here in Seoul. Do stay tuned to us here on Arirang TV. And a reminder that our next newscast is coming up at noon Korea time in around 90 minutes with our very own Lee Ji-yoon. So until then, goodbye.